Confined spaces, an overview. Confined workplaces are areas where the configuration of the space limits the activities of employees who enter such areas to perform work operations. Confined spaces often have limited entry and exit points, and employees who work in confined spaces face an increased risk of entrapment, engulfment, or exposure to hazardous atmospheric conditions. Many American workers die each year due to the hazardous conditions found in confined spaces. On average, for each worker who dies in a confined space, 2 more workers die trying to rescue the fallen individual. These would-be rescuers are often friends of the fallen worker, who rush into a dangerous situation to help, but only become victims themselves. Thus, it is quite common for confined space incidents to result in multiple fatalities. It is important to note that the purpose of this lesson is not to train individuals to enter confined spaces, or to perform rescues in confined spaces. For this, a more focused training is needed than what will be covered in this lesson. The primary purpose of this lesson, rather, is to introduce you to the requirements for an effective confined space program. What is a confined space? Let us begin by defining a confined space. Under OSHA's definition, a confined space has 3 distinct characteristics. It is large enough for an employee to fully enter and perform work operations. It is not designed for continuous occupancy, and it has a limited or restricted means of entry or exit. Examples of confined spaces could include underground vaults, tanks, storage bins, pits, silos, or vessels, among others. Once an employer identifies the existence of confined spaces on a worksite, these confined spaces will be designated as either permit-required confined spaces, or non-permit confined spaces. A permit-required confined space, also known as a permit space, is a confined space that has one or more of the following characteristics. It contains or has the potential to contain a hazardous atmosphere. It contains a material which has the potential to engulf a worker who enters the space. It has an internal configuration that might cause an entrant to be trapped or asphyxiated by inwardly converging walls or by a floor that slopes downward and tapers to a smaller cross-section, and/or it contains any other recognized serious safety or health hazards. If a confined space does not meet any of the 4 requirements for a permit-required confined space, then it is a non-permit confined space. In general, a non-permit confined space does not have any hazard severe enough to cause death. Employers should still regulate workers who enter non-permit confined spaces, but the entrance procedures will not be as strict as those for a permit-required confined space. OSHA's permit-required confined space decision flowchart is a useful tool that can assist employers in determining whether a confined space requires a permit for entry or not.